My name is Ellery Wagner, and I'm the electrical sub-team lead on Team 930.
My name is Ethan Gordhammer, and I'm an electrical member on Team 930.
Team 930 is the first robotics team running out of the Mugwanago school area. This season, our team was the first pick of the winning alliance on the Midwest Regional. Additionally, at the Wisconsin and Pittsburgh Regional, we were a rank 1 team. At Pittsburgh, we were also recipients of the Engineering Inspiration Award and the regional winners. Then finally, at the Milstein Division, we are part of the third alliance. Okay, so today we will be going over what is REV, and then what hardware, control systems, and motors that REV sells, and then how you can integrate REV into programming, and then what is Team REV, and what new opportunities REV has, and then we'll have an overview. So firstly, what is REV? Founded in 2014, REV is a program that supplies over 200 countries with both educational and competitional robotic supplies. These supplies are anything from chain tools to swerve modules to first electronics. It's hard to find a robot that does not have some aspect of REV at competition. Even new teams have opportunities to easily find and receive these products, as REV's website hosts the EveryBot. If anyone else is interested in learning more about the EveryBot, we'll have another presentation about it here at 11. And then finally, REV also made their own starter bot, which helps give variety to new teams.
So, moving on to REV hardware. Some of you may or may not be aware of the wide variety of different screws that they sell, anywhere from like socket head to button heads or end cap screws. They also have this new kind of thing called the max spline axle, which you can see here and we will be passing around. It kind of looks like a star with an extra point that then have all been chopped flat, and it's a piece of extruded aluminum that is hollow, allowing you to put an axle inside called the dead axle, which Team 930 we were able to use in our arm this year to help increase stability and have two independent rotating parts. So one side rotates by itself and the other side rotates by itself, one to move our arm and the other to move the manipulator. They also sell a variety of metal plates and different materials, as earlier mentioned, that can be used to build your own EveryBot. If you're interested, you can just go onto their website, type in EveryBot, and you'll just find all the stuff that you'll need. So, REV Motor. They sell the Neo and the Neo 550. These motors are very cool motors, as they are they must be used with the max spark to run them, right there. And they can be used anywhere. You can use them on your swerve, your arms, your manipulators, whatever your heart desires. You can use your Neos there in replacement for other CMI style motors, such as Falcons and stuff like that. They are very compact and very power dense. They have been designed to be good replacements and elevate the competition of FIRST Robotics. Did you know that they also sell Max Planetary? If you're not aware of what Max Planetary is a gear system in which you can stack them upon each other to get different gear ratios. The way it works is you just put your highest gear ratio on the motor to give the motor the best benefit, and then you just stack upwards from largest to smallest to whatever gear ratio you want. So, like this, if you were to do a 3-to-1 to a 5-to-1, your gear ratio would be 15. So would anybody be able to tell me what would happen if you put a 4-to-1 on a 4-to-1 on a 4-to-1? What gear ratio would you get? 64. Yes, you would get a 64-to-1 ratio. What happens if you did like a 5-to-1 on a 5-to-1 on a 5-to-1? What might you get there? 125. Yeah, 125. Now here comes a fun one. What happens if you put a 4-to-1 on a 4-to-1 on a 3-to-1? 48. Yes, you would get a 48-to-1. And the last one here, a 5-to-1, a 5-to-1, and a 3-to-1. 75. Yep, you would get a 75-to-1 gear ratio. They also make these versions, as you can see over here, the smaller version for our new 550. Right here, we have an open one, so you'll be able to see inside what the gears look like. It's a orbit system, so you have your gears on the like sun gears
They're
and your
greasy, so.
planetary gears that orbit around each other to get you your gear ratios.
Okay, so has anyone used CTRE's power distribution panel? Yes. Does anyone have any issues with it they would like to share? No? No one? Yes, everyone.
I always have to use a Wago tool to get my wires.
Well, here are some issues that Team 930 has run into. So, firstly, it has limited ports. The PDP only has 15 larger gauge ports, which for our team, as seen on our lovely wiring diagram, we use 17 ports. And without any of these systems, our competitiveness would have been greatly hindered. The same thing happens with the smaller ports. And we have the PDP has 2 ports for 20 amp and 1 port for 10 amp. And we used 4 systems that all use 10 amp. So that, and as rule 615 states, the radio must be powered off of 10 amps. So this port would be taken, so we won't be able to power our radio, our cameras, or our encoder. The second thing is that these ports are hard to open, as Everin suggested. You have to do it in a very specific way. You have to put it a bit at an angle, stick it in, and then push down. And then sometimes it does that and closes on you. So would anyone like to try it? No?
Nobody?
Nobody? Okay. So you put it in at a little bit of an angle and push down.
You gotta try to stick the wire into while you're doing
Yeah. So
that seems quite terrible.
yeah, and now imagine doing that while this is buried in the inside of your belly pan, and with a few minutes left before your until your next match. That sounds very stressful to me. So we have a solution to pretty much all the issues we mentioned, which is
Our friend here, the Power Distribution Hub, or PDH for short. REV offers a Power Distribution Hub, or PDH for short, with lever lock connectors, making it much easier to open and close with a nice satisfying click to get your wires in there. Also, it is much easier to get your wires in there and make sure they're in there while it's buried deep inside the belly of the beast of your robot. With the PDH, it offers, like we said before, those smaller connectors here, 4 of them, which can be either 20 amp or 10 amp to be what you most desire on your robot. Would anybody like to play around with the connectors on the PDH, or are you all you? Okay.
compare the difference.
Just pull from the orange piece all the way up till it clicks, and then you.
And then also when you pull it up, it stays up, so you don't have to struggle with the Wago while trying to put the wire in at the same time, which is helpful.
So, has anybody here used pneumatics before? Yeah, probably. Okay. So here we have the pneumatics hub offered by REV, or PH for short. Please don't get confused with the PDH. One letter difference, not the same, very different. This is a great option compared to the CTRE's pneumatics control hub, which sadly has to be plugged in our PDP, or this, where your PH can be plugged into your PDH. Again, this is just so much easier. It has a whole bunch of tiny little connectors. You can use 16 single-acting solenoids, or you can use 8 double-acting solenoids, or you can just combine them to your heart's desire till you get what you want for your robot. Would anybody like to look at this closer up?
Did anyone actually use pneumatics this year for the robot? We stayed away from it this year. We've been pneumatic team for a few years, and we decided to stay away from it this year. We changed away from it.
So, how many people here have been powering their radio with a traditional barrel connector? Nobody? Really? Wow. Okay.
Well, we did.
So, this year, we decided to power it with a barrel connector, and as we found out the very hard way, it led to bad connections to our radio, leading to it disconnecting from our drive station, even restarting our drive station. But with REV, they came out with a version called the RPM, or radio power module. Right here, as you can see. It's very small, very tiny, very compact. What it does is you plug it in the Ethernet from your RoboRio to the RPM, and then Ethernet from your RPM to your radio power module. And all you have to do is apply power to the little power ports here, and then wada, your radio has now been powered using your RPM, much easier than a barrel connector, which can easily be pulled out compared to your Ethernet connectors. We found this out the very hard way this year. Would anybody like to look at this?
Would you like to compare it to the barrel connector?
Yeah, I actually have a barrel connector at home. It is very problematic.
Yeah. I mean, the Ethernet clicks if you put it in correctly. Thank you. So, fun time, programming and integration, all of our favorites. So, some of you may or may not be aware of the fact that REV has a software called the Phoenix software tool, which you must use to interface with your robot. What it does is, via connecting through your RoboRio, builds a tunnel between your computer and the CAN bus, allowing you to talk to all the things on your CAN bus. Like items such as the previously mentioned PDH, PH, or RPM, and even the pigeon, just to name a few. It also allows you to ID your items. If you're not sure what IDing is, it's pretty much like giving your items a name on the item and in the code, so then you can easily recognize it with ease inside your code. So as like you can see up here, this is an example of our code with stuff ID'd. And then down here, you'll be able to see all of your motors and sparks into the graph, so you're able to like control them and ID them easily, which is probably the best part. Moving on to debugging, which is a very important part of your robotics journey here. Without your robot, without debugging your code and stuff, your robot would break, fail traumatically, causing very bad problems. There's some ways you can debug using like simulations, like Advantage Scope, which We have a presentation going on right now about like testing your robot and simulations and programming stuff. I hope you send somebody over there if you're interested. If not, the video from the presentation will be posted on our YouTube channel sometime after MROC. The other way you can do it is by running motors and testing them, which you can do straight from these programs here. And you can just run your motors by doing that, which you can see here. This is like the program you'll see it in, and then this is just like a zoomed up version of the Sparks that you can run the motors on.
Quick question: Who loves Spark? That's what I hope. Has anyone had any issues with Sparks this last year, specifically around like using these tools? Is there anything you guys wish you knew more about?
That was my fault. I single-handedly caused the stage 4 brownout.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Has anyone come? So can you go back to your last slide real quick? One more. Sorry, I forgot you. Okay, so the Phoenix tuner. So I don't know if you guys have had any issues, but one of the things to be noted here. So REV has decided to release their new software to actually support their. I forget what's. I don't know if anyone remembers the name of the new software. You might remember. Do you remember how they have like this 2.0 version of their software that requires some kind of a subscription to actually utilize Phoenix Pro? Yeah. So one thing to keep note, they actually released their Phoenix Pro drivers alongside their standard drivers that you guys should be typically using unless you're paying for their subscription. Be aware that if you do install that Pro software onto your hardware, it does actually just completely make your hardware unusable without that subscription. And we actually ran into that this year. We spent nearly like 3 days trying to reformat our hardware. So just be aware of that as you guys are if you guys are using REV more and more, that's actually a thing you got to pay attention to.
And be aware when debugging, just in case, that you have the current version of it, because they roll out with new updates every year or even more often than that. So before you go making some drastic changes to your code, just double check that you're in the right version.
Now we will be talking about Team Rev. So every year, more than 1,200 teams apply for Team Rev. The company selects 60 FRC and FDC teams for this opportunity. These teams are chosen based on their performance, both on the playing field and how they are role models in their local communities. Being a part of Team Rev helps them to expand these capabilities even more and show first impact judges how big of a role model they are. Some of these teams are well-known teams like Israel's Orbit, while some were rookies like 908 GeForce Robotics. So some of these opportunities that REV provides, the first thing is they sponsor them financially, handing out a total of $100,000. REV also sets forth these point-based challenges is what they're called, and they're distributed, they're broken down based on their distribution throughout the season. So a one-time challenge only happens once during the build season, while monthly challenges happen every single month. And then periodic challenge happens at a distribution other than a month. And the teams are encouraged to put first and REV principles into practice, especially graces, professionalism, and teamwork between teams to complete these challenges. And then the more challenges that are completed, the more rewards that these teams get, and those rewards include REV merch and being spotlighted on REV social media, and then finally different opportunities to partner with REV. And all of these challenges and more opportunities are communicated to teams on exclusive Discord and email blasts. Now, what is new with REV? So in preparation for the last season, REV released a new system called REV Ion with the goal of competitive robotics made simple. They released 300 new products, And with these new products, they released new versions of their guidebooks and technical page to explain these parts, give teams more opportunities with these, and also release new videos with YouTube also explaining. Then since 2021, REV has started a blog which connects REV to the FIRST community by explaining the ideas, new products, and people behind REV. And then digging a little bit more into REV Ion, we have an example of a 6-pin joiner board, which Team 930's electrical team has used very oftenly this season. So these joiner boards are used to connect Neos or Neo 550s, their sensor cables, to their Spark Maxes. So we use this for our manipulator motor. It started on our manipulator, goes down the arm, and the spark is in the carriage system, is what we call it. And more recently, we added these to our ground intake, which before we had it secured by a solder joint. Although this was a very secure connection, we had issues when we needed to replace this motor on our ground intake during a elims match at IRI. So this led to a very messy solder connection that used up all our time in between these matches. So after IRI, we changed it out with one of these joiner boards, so if we ever needed to replace that motor again, we could do so quickly and efficiently. And then some issues we had is that it's somewhat fragile. The sensor cables like to pull out. So what 930 did to fix this is, as this picture shows up here, that's the joiner board. We put just like a zip tie behind it and electrical taped it so that those sensor wires don't have an opportunity to bend out and pull out. And then furthermore, we have the max tube, which provides with tubes that are a great variety for first teams. It's split into 3 groups: the no pattern or base max tube, which is right there. It has these guidelines that allows teams to have their drill stay straight as they drill holes, but being able to have the flexibility of drilling a hole pattern that they need. Well, the grid pattern, which is this one, it already has a standard 3-row hole pattern drilled out. So if teams are just using the standard hole pattern, they can save time and start building right away. And then finally, we have the max pattern, which has that max spline carved out in it and separated by a column of 3 holes. This is used for max spline, gears, pulleys, motors. It's for securing things more of the time. And then with these additions, they have reinforced corners to reduce the risk of collapse, and they are all having similar size they have a similar height, similar width, and then they all have grooves on the pre-drilled holes that are used to secure number 10 nut switch rev cells. And then with the addition of max tube and other materials, it has made REV update their guidebooks. Guidebook is a PDF with 29 pages explaining how to use key products of REV Ion in your robot. And this is an example from page 11 that shows how to healthily secure a bolt through your max tube or any tube in general, which helps prolong the lifespan of the tube and gives teams of any level tips on how to better their robot. Oh. Here you go.
So to wrap this up, since we just threw like a ton of information at you, I'm gonna just talk about things a little bit. So what have we learned today? Well, first we learned how REV is a company that's trying to elevate the gameplay and competitiveness of FIRST robotics. We talked about some of the hardware, such as Max Spline and the screws and bolts that they sell, along with the different motors and gear ratios they sell. Then we talked more about some of the hardware and stuff that they sell, such as like the PDH and the RPM and the pH. And then we ended that section talking about software tools and stuff that you can use to help make your REV integration into programming easier and smoother time. And then we talked about Team Rev and some new things that are coming out, such as like Rev Ion systems and financial gains that you get for being part of Team Rev. So,
Any questions?
any questions?
Yeah.
What time is it?
9:30. Perfect timing, I think. Any other questions?
No? No questions?
Well, thank you for coming today. And another slide. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us on our social media and email us. So thank you again for coming.
So on the way out today, if you guys have any feedback for us, we did